here.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Kind of switched it up, and I'm doing the welcome back now. But that was enlightening. We're here in downtown Evanston, and like you said, we can't not talk to downtown Evanston while being downtown Evanston.
Right?
That'll be a little counterintuitive, but
Right. I'm kind of excited about the whole dance event we're going to get started.
I know. There seemed to be a lot of crowd reaction when it came to the dancing. So, I mean, you probably won't see me here dancing. I'll be watching from afar. I'll be people watching, but, y'all will have plenty of fun. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can be a judge. I'll have the scorecards and everything.
Now, Wojo can dance. Have you all seen him dance?
No. Yeah, we don't.
Yes.
We'll get some music playing later. You can show off your moves.
Yes. You have a partner with it.
Oh, most definitely. So, I know our next guest is someone that I know personally I've worked with for quite some time. And she is absolutely fantastic in the world of organizing, going around affordable housing, and that has really been the focal point for a lot of people in Evanston, and she is from Skokie as well, so that's definitely a focal point in Skokie, is how do we make our community more affordable? More often than not, there's folks who have been here for generations that can get priced out. There are people that say, well, I wanna sell my home, I wanna downsize, but I have nowhere else to move in Evanston because everything's so expensive, right? So we lose out a lot of that community value because of it. So she's done so much incredible work here in Evanston, Skokie, covering the entirety of the North Shore of Chicago, in advocating for affordable housing and helping create affordable housing. So it is my pleasure to introduce good friend Gail Schechter onto the stage. Gail, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you wanna start off first by telling everybody a little bit about your background and some of the work that you've been doing?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Actually, I was thinking to myself that August of 2024 will represent 40 years of a career in tenant and community organizing.
That's a round of applause for that.
I actually, in a way, it goes before that because I was organizing tenants as a student at Oberlin College. In my senior year, came back to Brooklyn, came back to New York where I'm from, and started working as a tenant organizer for a community-based group, and those were some of the best years. And fast forward, the reason I moved out here in 1990 is I knew that Chicago is the home of Saul Alinsky and community organizing, and I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to be.
Well, I was so impressed with you. Community Alliance for Better Government, which Sebastian is president of, had given this amazing housing event in Skokie, and you spoke, and it gave me chills. I was supposed to be like the host, to ask the questions of the audience, but she had gotten me so emotional. I totally got out. I was like, get your head back in the game, girl. Like, get your head back in the game. Because she was blowing me away with so much information, because we do have a housing problem here in Evanston. Now, we did all the wonderful things, we had Leah and Justin and Andy Vick and, but Evanston does have some issues. We celebrate Evanston for its beauty, but it also has some issues. I see some heads shaking over there. Yes. And housing is a big one. It's a big one. So what are we going to, we don't have enough. We don't have enough housing, period. We don't have enough affordable housing. But then again, what does affordable mean?
Right.
What does affordable mean?
Yeah, I mean, the whole issue with the affordable housing shortage, all of the issues that we have, the conflicts we have with housing, all boils down to the fact that we commodified housing in this country, meaning we take a basic human need and put a price tag on it. So as soon as you do that, you're going to have some who have and some who have not. And, so if we reframe it that housing is really the bedrock of community, you actually change the whole political equation. And I wanted to read to you something that, this is new news, very staggering news that talks about the extremity of what we're dealing with, and why some of these issues are not going to get better until we take control of our market. So this is just from yesterday, from Bloomberg. The U.S. housing market, the biggest market is the ultra wealthy. So properties worth over $1 million were the only category that saw a sales increase in June, according to the National Association of Realtors. Affluent buyers are able to avoid taking out mortgages, sidestepping the interest rates near 6.9% that are deterring others from entering the market. They're funding their purchases with robust stock portfolios, sales of long-held properties, and generational wealth. And the demand is boosting luxury home building. The price of a typical starter home now eclipses $1 million in 237 U.S. cities. It's staggering. And what we have to do is, we have to understand some of those dynamics, and some of those dynamics are being experienced right here in Evanston, of housing as like a blue chip stock, as opposed to a place that people actually live in, raise families, grow old in.
There's so much I can say to that. So much I can say to that. I'm not gonna take over. You all go ahead, jump in there. So much I can say to that.
It is, and truly, we've seen it time and time again. I think one of the pieces of advocacy that I worked on a number of Evanston residents that Malika helped with as well was organizing around Evanston's reparations program, right? And originally it was a housing program designed to give $25,000 to residents who had been discriminated against from 1919 to 1969, right? The housing program, as it was structured, you had the option to either buy a new home with that money, you could put it towards your mortgage, or you could renovate your home. And then the problem then became, y'all live in Evanston, you know that $25,000 is not enough for a down payment in Evanston, let alone anywhere else in the Chicagoland area, right? So we're not actually addressing some of these, in terms of, say, reparations, right? We may be repairing the damages that have been done to certain individuals, but the systems that are still messed up in the first place are still very much there, and we're not actually getting ourselves out of a hole. So in terms of, just affordability in Evanston, and I know you're in Skokie as well, and we've had conversations about the status of affordability in Skokie. What do you think are some of the solutions to the problems that we're facing?
Right. Well, there are two really different types of solutions. I think of it as both the supply side and the demand side. So the supply side means having enough housing that people at different price points can afford. And by the way, when I'm telling you, we were talking earlier about what's the definition of affordable housing. When I think of affordable in my mind, and for most of us, when you look at the data, is $50,000 a year seems to be the dividing line. People earning under that are really hurting. 80% of people in Evanston and Skokie earning under $50,000, households, are paying more than a third of their incomes for their housing. 80%, and the lower the income, the more they're paying. So in terms of a supply side solution is having more housing that's affordable to people at that level. So it could be through inclusionary zoning. So any new building has to have a mix of incomes in it. And by the way, those affordable units should be permanently made affordable, not expire. I don't know how many people are aware that the quote affordable housing Evanston that's mandated under inclusionary policies actually expires after a number of years. Yes, a generation. And then you've got demand side solutions, which is what can we do to help people be able to afford what's on the market. So that's things like vouchers, other ways to boost income. So those are really important things. Solutions that I love are community land trusts, because they take land out of the speculative market, meaning that you can't just have a piece of vacant land and suddenly it goes up exponentially in value. So those are things that help. Anything that helps existing homeowners, landlords of small buildings to fix up their homes without having to raise the rents. There are programs out there in Cook County, Evanston. All Evanston even has to do is tell people about some of these programs, which they're not doing.
Well, I was going to say, why don't they? But we know why. We know why. The Wesley property, that situation speaks volumes. Is everyone familiar with what happened with Wesley? Yes. So they were blindsided because the building wasn't kept up, and they let my opinion, they let the building go over years so that they could kick the people out and say, oh, it's too dangerous for you to live in.
Yeah, so that's another thing, all about preservation. The city should be inspecting these properties regularly. In fact, the city says that buildings in low-income census tracts, like the Wesley buildings, are supposed to be inspected every 3 years. Well, they were inspected in 2015, and here we are, 2024. 2022 was the last time an inspector even walked in there, and things had deteriorated. So that's a really big issue. And I don't know if people know, I did write a letter to the reparations committee, and I said, you all could buy this building. You got $17 million sitting in the reparations fund. You could buy that building, you could fix it up, or buy another property and give them a place to live, since it's so dangerous to live there. Or how about this? If you buy the building, because black people, it's like a mad exodus really being priced out of Evanston, why don't you give those tenants a percentage of ownership in the thank you, yes. But the reparations committee was like, have you heard anything? Okay. Thank you. I thought it was a good idea. People need, yes, well, we'll keep pushing. Well, no, because I get the heat, because I'll be pushing. I get the heat, but we need the community to, if they're about the housing program, if it's about housing, then that's some solutions. To keep the black community here and keep a roof over their head, because they're being priced out. Yeah, well, in between 2000 and 2020, so in this 20 years, 1,000 black homeowners moved out of Evanston. 1,000. And we've gone from a situation of 17% of homeowners in Evanston were black, and now it's something like 7%. It's really good. And a lot of that was the foreclosure crisis.
And I think too, there's a piece of this, because folks will say, well, that's just the natural market, taking its turn. People are going where they want to go. But I look at it as, the people of Evanston. Evanston is a great place. We look around us, it looks beautiful. We've got some very beautiful murals that have been put up all over the place. It looks great. But without the people that make Evanston, it's not truly Evanston anymore. If the people who created the murals don't live here anymore and have to move out of Evanston because it's not affordable anymore, then we're not getting that beauty anymore. If there are people that have lived in Evanston for generations and have to move because it becomes too expensive to live here, we lose that critical resource. But I'm also really glad that you pinpointed on preservation as well. because I think we see more often than not, because right now it is more affordable to rent than it is to own a home because of just the housing expenses that come with it. So, and more people are having to rent, and still at very high rates. But what I've seen, a comfortable, livable home, and not give them the services that they need is a travesty. And so I think part of it is, you know, we have to increase the amount of inspections that we have in Evanston.
And we have to do a lot more, like you say, to recognize the value of renters. I remember hearing a national leader in rental housing. He was giving a talk about what makes, you know, because people like to say, oh, renters don't care about the community. Renters, you know, leave. Renters are, you know, somehow lesser than homeowners. Well, there are things that actually equalize the renter and the homeowner. If the rent that they have is affordable, if they have a stable lease, and the third is if the landlord is keeping the place up. You have those three things, and you erase any difference between a renter and a homeowner in terms of how much they care about their community. I just want to add one thing I didn't mention is that my day job is I'm the executive director of Housing Opportunities and Maintenance for the Elderly, or H.O.M.E, in Chicago, which is a 40-year-old organization. And our big innovation is that we do intergenerational affordable rental housing. We have a building, you know, 5 minutes from here in Rogers Park, the Natalie Salmon House, which is rental housing that mixes people intentionally of generations, older people, families with children, single, younger adults. We have a communal living floor for people who are, who otherwise experience social isolation. We have actually some Evanston residents who lost families and friends and found community in that kind of situation. That's a kind of innovative idea that could happen, right here in this community.
Yeah, I know we have to let you go, but what are some things that the community can do to fight what's happening in Evanston in terms of the housing?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that's a really good question and an important one. I think an important answer to that is just be educated and understand what we're talking about when we say affordable housing. Ask questions, not take things as a given that you might hear that say, oh, it's ugly housing, or does that mean that criminals move in, or, there's just so many bits of this misinformation, so understanding that. And then the other thing, which might seem a little counterintuitive, is that to realize that the question is not, do we want affordable housing or do we not want affordable housing? The question is, what kind of community do we want to have? What kind of Evanston do we want to live in? Which is what you're doing, Malika, with this show. You get the answers. I mean, even just sitting here tonight and hearing everybody, what I'm hearing is, we want a community that has, young people, going to school, arts, vibrant downtown. And somehow you answer that question and you realize, oh yeah, part of that equation is people of different income levels, different racial groups, people with disabilities all living together. And then you figure out how you make that happen. So it's understanding that housing is not the question.
Anyone have any questions for Gail?
See? I knew it.
A lot of times when the city talks about affordable housing, they talk about the developers that, build these big buildings and they offer 5 units, 10 units at affordable prices, right? Well, I really have looked into that. The affordable prices are, in most of these are 1 bedroom, maybe 2. Certainly not for families. And affordable is really not affordable. I mean, you're talking $1,700, $1,800 for a studio, right? Is that affordable for no. So, and that's a lot of what I think the city tries to push as their affordable store. Is that right? I mean, they say, well, we have affordable units, but
yeah, I think they say this to sort of appease people who are in favor of affordable housing, thinking, oh, I'll get my 1,000 units. I'm exaggerating for a point, but approved because I've got 10 affordable units, even though they're affordable to people earning, $100,000 a year. And what I've seen is I call it sort of a Trojan horse. It's the developer using the affordable units to actually create an even more, to skew even more wealthy. And the problem with that is not only do we have these new units coming up, but it affects the rents and prices for everybody else.
Yeah, they're saying it's not gentrification, but what is gentrification? Like, how do people know if their neighborhood is being gentrified? What are the signs? And then let's compare what's actually happening right now to what the signs are, and then let's see what's actually happening.
Well,
what are the signs?
I mean, some of them are, of course, your neighbors are moving out, your property taxes are going way up. You're finding that you can no longer live here. If you're in a neighborhood that's been mostly people of color, you'll see more affluent, white people moving in. You'll see a different kind of, stores coming in, like maybe more national franchises, as opposed to mom and pop stores. So those are some of the signs, but definitely patterns of investment change in the community.
We'll take one more question.
Along the lines of what Carol was saying, Swedish misnomer is that we are meeting because white is about 107,000 and non-white is 5,000. You have an incredible
Yeah, that's what that community land trust model. So a community land trust is where essentially the people own and control the land through a nonprofit that separates the ownership of the land from what goes on it. But the other piece of that, when you're talking about the area median income, that has to change, I think, at a national level, because you think so that's a number that HUD puts out for every metropolitan area. And you see it like, wow, the Chicago area, it's like, it's now like $110,000 for a family of four. Wow, people have gotten raises, But the thing is, affordable housing is pegged to that. So 80% of AMI is pretty high. But I was watching a NewsHour, they had a piece about Austin, Texas, saying they're putting up more affordable housing, but how come more and more people are having problems? And an expert, a woman who's involved in affordable housing, had a really good insight. And she said, because of that skewing, it's actually the wealthier people that are moving into the Chicago area or buying things that are skewing the area median income up, but everybody else is not getting all these raises. So I think what we have to do is either say that, quit talking about 60 to 80% of AMI and talk about under 50% or 30 to 50, or maybe use a dollar amount, like I said, $50,000, but something like that. But yeah, we have to try to figure out ways to enable.
Thank you so much, Gail. All right, we'll be right back. Woo.